One aspect of photography that continues to fascinate and delight me is its relationship with reality. Like painting, its cousin in the visual arts, photography uses various tools and techniques to portray a picture that can range anywhere along the spectrum from how things are or how they look to something that I would offer is based on but does not necessarily represent reality. In this sense, the reality of what the eye sees as an observer is just a jumping off point for the interpretation of a scene. Through the application of such elements as composition, lens focal length and characteristics, film stock or sensor, depth of field, and shutter speed, the photographer can highlight, accentuate, and combine various aspects to create a picture that can evoke an equally wide range of visceral or emotional responses in the viewer. Greetings and welcome to Portraits in Fitness. My name is David. I recently went on a quick sojourn on a cruise ship from San Francisco down into Mexico through San Diego and back. And I brought some film cameras, digital camera, tripod with me, not really knowing where my eye and my heart would take me. So I find it kind of interesting where I ended up, and I'd like to share some of the images with you. It kind of takes me back to something I did well over 5 years ago on my first cruise. I actually made a music video with an independent singer-songwriter based in LA named Kristina Johnsen. And our mission of sorts was maybe to obscure or not make it obvious that we were on a cruise ship, because most of the shooting we did was while the ship was at sea and moving on the ocean. And we pretty much eliminated showing any other people, passengers or crew on the cruise. And in a similar way, even though I'm a portrait and branding photographer in my professional work, and I work with people all the time, and I really get so much out of working with people, I found myself on this trip just drawn to different aspects of being on the cruise ship. And when we landed on shore, I wasn't even very inspired to do any photography. So what does one photograph on a cruise? There were upwards of 4,300 people aboard. So the opportunities to take candid or street photography or even portraits or anything involving people were certainly fruitful and aplenty on board, despite it being this massive city with a huge power plant floating on the ocean. I was drawn to the pockets of solitude and tranquility that were found throughout the ship on all levels at all times of the day. I don't recall deliberately trying to eliminate people from the scenes, but maybe that's what I was going for. And I think that the whole idea of sharing a ship with over 4,000 people and still being able to find oases or pockets of solitude and tranquility in many places on board really appealed to me. So that's one thing that drew my eye and my lens while on board on this trip. But most of all, I was attracted to the water. And maybe that's because I'm truly a Pisces. So maybe you've seen a lot of photography where there's a body of water and the photographer shoots it with a very long exposure. And what happens is that the amplitude of whatever surface ripples or waves there are, they kind of cancel each other out and create a smooth surface with a bit of maybe a misty fuzz on top. And I certainly love that, especially when contrasted with stationary elements such as a dock or even stanchions and pillars in like a wharf. So there's certainly an allure to that kind of depiction of bodies of water. One thing I've been doing on an ongoing basis since many years ago while staying on the Florida coast, looking for ways to photograph the beach and ocean at sunrise and sunset while staying there for weeks or months at a time, is trying to bring out patterns in light color, and motion by moving the camera itself, rather than letting the environment paint the picture. Waves or ripples become ridges, the sky and clouds are washed together in streaks of light and blocks of color, and foreground and background are drawn closer together in the same plane. I love experimenting with different cameras, both analog and digital, and trying various film stocks. This isn't a gear channel, but as I went over in my previous video, sometimes the flaws inherent in a camera or lens can bring out something unique or different, or something you've never even thought of to open up creative possibilities. One thing of note technically that I would like to mention is that I was inspired by a particular film stock called Lomochrome Purple, and the color palette that it has. It's a unique powdery pink and purple color palette, depending on how it's exposed. And I find it really beautiful. So even the digital images that I took of the motion of the water, or my camera's motion over the water, were color graded and post-processed with that kind of color palette in mind. And I will continue to try and find that film stock. It's really interesting to use. Just don't shoot people with it, because they'll become purple people eaters. Not exactly a flattering look, but with landscapes and even industrial items and settings, it's a pretty cool thing to use. So to wrap up, I shared some of these images with a friend the other day who enjoyed them and asked me an interesting question, which was, which of these would you like to print out real big and large and hang on a wall? And I can't really answer that at this point. I'm still kind of letting them settle and living with these images, but at some point I will probably make a decision to have one of these, or one or more of these images, print it out or print out myself and enlarge and hang on a wall, whether at home or in my studio. And I find it kind of intriguing that out of the very few pictures that are actually hanging on our walls at home, 2 of them that I've enlarged and had printed out on canvas are of this sort of aesthetic of moving my camera over a body of water, and the other is with a landscape and a mountain, and it's just kind of a glowing sky at first light in the morning over a mountain setting that's in silhouette, but with movement. And so I think there's a pattern here. I just really enjoy this sort of photography. I hope you do too. And as always, we'll see you in the next video. But until then, be good to yourself.